I know. So in your groups, what I want you to do is for each group to come up and to go through 2 areas of risk they've identified and put them on the board. Okay. If you can nominate somebody for each to do.
Michael has very neat writing.
And we'll go through it. Okay.
That's okay. Yeah, sure.
So, which group is going first? Who's the brave ones?
We are.
Oh.
Yeah, we're eager beavers.
Very. Okay. So, what I want you to do is to put your 2 best ones on the board and to take us through it as a mini presentation. So, come on, you 3 were very confident. Come on, chop.
Oh, God. They're confident.
Oh, no, ladies, you've got to go up there with him.
Oh, is it? What?
Oh, yes.
It's like those game shows. So we just
And just send one to go up and write them.
No. One's riding, but the other 2 are there to support and answer any
Moral support.
moral support. Yes.
So, right.
So,
correct or inaccurate would be a better word.
So it could be
What was the word?
delay. Therefore, delay calling on. You just look for me. Calling on.
That's it.
Is that the other one there?
And that's the house for prevention.
Why isn't this a board? It's going to start writing on it. Lucky for you.
no, don't worry. Because sometimes people have written on that one.
Ah, yeah. See,
look.
No. Do you want my glasses, love?
It's too small.
Okay.
Diligence.
Yeah.
Thanks for the
DILI.
GENEC. Diligence. It's CE, yeah. And just basically cross-reference.
Cross-reference.
So you like just, so just cross-reference your searches and stuff,
searches.
Searches
And stuff.
No.
That's it, that'll do.
Yeah, so
That'll do.
with your property interest report, PIP. PIR, okay.
That's all right.
All right.
Alright, number 2.
That's your shoelaces.
Press money.
The mistake. Okay.
Disciplinary action.
Consequence.
That's not how it's spelled, is it?
That's close enough. That's all right.
PLI.
I. Yeah.
NARY.
And
Action. And misappropriate.
Oh.
No.
But I just want the consequence.
That's all right. And then accurate records.
And again, extreme diligence again.
Deposit receipt. Or receipts.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'll do.
Yeah, records. That'll be receipts as well.
Yeah.
Okay,
2.
go.
That's it? 2?
Take us through it.
What do you mean take you through it?
Yeah,
Oh.
just gonna take us through it now.
All right, Martha, that's your job. Go for it.
Okay, so we've got the area of risk, we've got Form 1 preparation. So what can go wrong with that? You end up with a defective form. Obviously that will impact on your calling off, and it could also mean that the purchaser gives them more chance to pull out if they want to pull out. And then, preventing that, just extreme diligence, cross-referencing your searches and your property interest support to make sure, just don't rush through it. Just be very diligent when you do the prepare the Form 1.
Yeah. Okay, so let's go on your first one now. Okay, that's a good example. We just want to expand on the consequences that you've got. What could go wrong? You've said defective form, delay in calling off, purchaser could pull out. So if it's a defective form, what else could occur? Just the consequences of that. So, if it's defective, are you saying if we don't, start all over again? So you're saying if we don't pick it up and then it's after, then you get sued because you're giving wrong information. Okay, so potentially you could get sued, couldn't you?
Yeah, because you prepared it.
Because you prepared it, and so there could be a damages claim there based on breach of contract, possibly from the client. And
non-proper disclosure,
Okay, so you can see also, Section 15 of the Land and Business Sale and Conveyancing Act could kick in, as well, if later on they might use that to get out of the contract, even if settlements occurred. So you could get sued, there could be financial consequences for your firm. So how to prevent, we've got, just go over that again, Mark.
Diligence?
Yes.
Just extreme diligence,
cross-referencing,
and just basically, don't rush through it. Just make sure that you just take your time and not just just assume.
Good. Okay, taking your time and being diligent. Okay. What if it's somebody's preparing it for you?
Are you talking about you're contracting someone else to do it?
So say you've got an employee.
Oh, an employee.
So what are you going to do to make sure this doesn't happen?
Well, I'd check his work.
Okay.
Definitely.
So we can add on there, can't we?
Supervision,
Supervision,
supervision.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, good. Let's move to your second one then now.
Trust money?
Okay, so we've got trust money. So with trust money, you have to be very careful. Sorry.
Yep.
Okay, with trust money, you got to be very accurate with your records, and again, diligence. And when you deposit trust money, you need to record that, give a receipt to your client. And trust money is going to be used for the purpose that it's for. You can't misappropriate the funds. Otherwise, there's disciplinary action. You could, you could come before the commissioner yourself as a conveyancer if you've misappropriated funds. I'm trying to think what else is it is.
So can you? Yeah. Okay, good. It's a good example. We want to expand on it a little bit. Okay. So you've said some great things. What act is there? An act that regulates this?
For the conveyance, under the Conveyances Act, yes.
Can you remember a section that might be relevant here?
Oh gosh, no. It's in my assignment. I can't remember off the top of my head. I'm sorry.
Anybody?
Yeah.
Part of the Trust Act.
Conveyances Act.
Yeah.
So this is really what we need.
There's a section in there that deals with trust accounts.
For example, there might be section 15 of the Conveyances Act. Money to be put into the trust account as soon as.
Because they get audited. You get audited.
Section 16. You've got withdrawal. Okay.
Yeah, withdrawing funds for the.
So in your risk plan, what I'd be looking for you to do is, if you're going to use an act of Parliament, which is great, to put in the actual section,
right?
Say the risk is there. Okay, and then that flows onto your consequence. And can you remember what the penalty was in those sections if you don't do that? Penalties up to what? Remember?
Was it 20,000? 20,000, yes.
Good.
Yeah.
Okay. So great. Now we're talking. So now looking at how to prevent.
So when you receive trust money, you have to deposit. If you're receiving like checks, you have to deposit as soon as possible. You can't just have it in your drawer and think, I'll just do that next week. It's got to be done immediately.
True.
Keep proper records. What's gone in, receipt.
You know that, but what if somebody else in the firm does it for you?
Or someone else is doing it. Well, then again, if that was an employer, again, supervise.
Supervision.
Check.
And written SOPs.
Yeah, supervision and what? If somebody's doing it, you can say make sure they've got what? Training.
Oh,
training.
yeah.
All right, good.
Wouldn't you just refer to documentation like the standard operating procedures manual that the company would have?
Oh, I'm sure you would, but what if they don't?
Or then they're idiots.
Absolutely. This is what we're saying. We're identifying risks. How do we prevent this risk? And basically, what you said, but there's a procedure. But the question is to make sure they follow the procedure. That there's training, that there's supervision.
Or you have someone like in the finance area that just deals with this, that does that. So you've got a person that is reliable and experienced and able to competently do this to avoid that.
You could
delegate that to to a trained person.
Good. Well done.
Do I get a lolly? No, I'm joking. Okay. Next. Okay. Come on, Julie. You love the mic.
Yeah, I think we're getting the gist of this now.
Just drop the mic.
Okay.
This can sit on the desk, can't it? You can hear us from here, can't it? Yep.
So,
you got to get up here too.
Yeah.
Yeah, you do.
No, I don't.
Okay. So if they clash, just use one of the other examples you used.
Yeah.
Oh, you're from sidelines.
There you go, take that. I think there's some kind of curriculum or something.
We are a defective Form 1 made the contract void. So we are a defective Form 1 served make the whole contract void.
Essentially, it won't make the contract void, but it won't be unenforceable. But if it's defective, then if steps are taken, then the whole thing can be set aside. And in Section 15, even if settlements occurred, the court could order the transaction to go back.
Yeah.
It's not,
Thanks.
not very likely, but they've got the power to do that, and they can do it.
So what should I do if, unfortunately, we're in that situation? We got made a mistake on Form 1, and they come to us. What we should do? If, unfortunately, we just in that difficult situation. And we made a mistake on Form 1. We said it's not divisible. We said it's divisible. This sort of thing. And we just made a mistake. And if they come to us, what are we going to do?
You'll often find bursaries will try and pressurise people. They try and get out of the deal. They may try and pressurise a vendor to say there's something wrong with the Form 1, pressurise them to serve it. And so then call off. So, that's sometimes used to try and get out of the deal. But the question is, if the Form 1 is effective, then, the Form 1 the new Form 1 has to be served. That's.
Have you ever come across one where that has been defective that you know of?
Oh, there's a couple of good cases where, there's the Miles Pierce case, which is a good one.
Oh, is it?
There's a Miles Pierce case. There's another one. I'll try and pull them out next week. There's a couple which were quite.
So this is where real estate agents, some of them do them as well.
Well, they were trained initially to actually do Form 1s, but they make mistakes. And I remember somebody, when I bought a block of land and the agent, I checked the Form 1 and he made a major mistake in the Form 1, real major. It didn't matter to me, it wasn't a big deal. It wasn't a problem, but later on I could have used it if I wanted to get out of the contract.
Yes. Yes.
But I wanted the land, so it wasn't a problem.
Is that time limitation on this kind of Form 1 thing? I find it 10 years later, I can still use it.
Sorry, John, I'm going to pinch the bottom.
No, look, you've got to put it into perspective. If a purchaser's going to bring an action, usually they're going to bring it when it becomes apparent why they're prejudiced.
Okay.
What's occurred that's prejudiced them.
Okay.
And usually that you'd expect them to do that sooner rather than later.
Okay. No kind of like limited them to pursue this action or this action too?
No. Usually in contract law it's 6 years.
Okay.
But in reality, what you'll find is that contracts won't be rescinded unless its action is taken quickly.
Yeah.
Okay. You almost ready to go?
Yeah.
Talking to me.
Do you want us to talk? Okay.
Yeah, take us through it. That's great.
First one's about calculating advising on stamp duty. Now, apart from the obvious, if you get it wrong, you're in trouble because then they might have to pay more tax. But I have a vague memory from Gemma's class that you're supposed to tell them that it's an estimate and that if they want to be sure, they should seek advice from their accountant because it's up to Revenue SA. I'm sure that she told her clients that there's an estimate.
Right.
Because, there are all these complex questions that determine whether or not how much stamp duty they have to pay.
Yeah, keep it simple. Keep it simple.
Yeah. So I think you're supposed to tell them that it's an estimate and that, seek advice from your accountant if you want to be 100% sure that it's usually correct. But other than that, try and get it right.
So what if you don't get it right? That's the question. That's the consequence.
If you don't get it right, then they might get a notice from Revenue SA that they have to pay more money.
Okay.
And then if you didn't tell them that it was an estimate, or if it was
could it delay
just on your
settlement?
part, if you didn't get them to advise from their accountant, then you could get a huge amount of tax they had to pay.
Okay. Could it delay things? Could it delay the settlement?
No.
Yeah.
Not unless they've got enough money, but otherwise no.
So it should be done before settlement, shouldn't it? The stamp duty
gets paid before.
Yeah.
Okay. So if they haven't got the money, if you haven't got the right amount to pay, and then it might delay settlement if you can't get the money to pay it, can't it?
Yeah.
Okay. So how will that look on you as a firm as well?
Bad.
Bad. So that could also damage your
reputation.
Yeah. So looking at the third column, how would we prevent this from occurring?
Well, if there's anything on that sheet, on that stamp duties question sheet that determines stamp duty that you're not sure of and they're not sure of, tell them to check with their accountant.
These are mine.
All of those tricky questions.
And also to contact stamp duties as well, isn't it? Okay.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one, yep. Ask Revenue SA, yep.
Okay. To go to the professionals and have the training to do that. What's your next example?
Oh, the capital gains withholding tax.
Okay, so what's happening here then? So that's the area of risk, the capital gains withholding.
Yeah.
What could go wrong?
You forget to tell your vendor early on that they have to get a clearance certificate if it's over 750,000.
Okay, so what then happens?
Well, then the tax might not get withheld. The tax might get withheld, and they might lose 2.5% of the 12.5% of the sale price, and then they'll have to apply for it from the Revenue SA to get it back, and you'll create a lot of trouble.
So what's the consequence for you if you haven't told them that?
Well, you'll have a very angry client.
Good, that's
and they might have that money could prevent them from paying some other bill they have to pay, so you could get sued if they suffer pecuniary loss before they get the money back.
Okay. But the main thing there is we're taking a bit further step there. But the main thing is that you haven't told them, and the consequences, as you said, you're going to have a very angry client, which means they're not going to be likely to repeat use, and they're not going to have a good word for you, are they?
No.
So how would we prevent this?
Well, I think you should have a checklist of things that you have to advise your client of, as well as all the tasks you've got to do in the conveyancing thing, and tick them off as you go along to make sure that you've told them.
Yeah, a checklist sounds good, and training and supervision. Okay, good. Last group.
Can you just answer, was that right or wrong? I'm not sure about that thing about telling them that it's an estimate with the revenue stamp duty.
I think the estimate is a good idea to tell them that's what you estimate. The question is making sure that by the time it comes to settlement that the correct figure is being used, there's no delay. You've got the money basically. And that's the key to make sure. And essentially, you use the government portals to make sure that it's correct. And so on. And make sure that it's, there's no delay essentially. That's what you don't want to happen because of that.
house without knowing how much the stamp duty is?
Well, that's usually going to be on your settlement statements as to what payments are being made and so on anyway. Okay, quickly, come on guys. Come on. Quick.
I'm going to do the writing.
Quick, use this one now. Use this one.
There's a calculator. There's actually a calculator on the main console.
Have good handwriting. Yeah, you write conflict of interest. Either way. Conflict of interest. Yeah, what could go wrong?
Use a different example if you can.
Then your license could be cancelled. Could be like cancelled, right? Or you got to be warned. Conflict of interest. Conflict of interest. Yeah. What could go wrong? If you're conflict of interest, you're just gonna be fined and the license be cancelled or be barred or something like that. Disciplinary action made again.
Okay, guys, let's just get up there and let's get your presentation off you then.
Okay. Yes. First, we write to the conflict of interest. Okay.
So what's the first area of risk?
Conflict of interest. You are in an area. You just do the conveyancer and probably you got a license for the land agent. You do the same thing together, and then you try to make some extra money. And you all represent the two people have conflict of interest. They are not related. You try to earn money from both sides, and you don't get a form to authorize you to this kind of thing, and you are in a conflict of interest. And if we find out you may have trouble with your license, you may have a disciplinary action made against you, and you'll be fined, license be cancelled or be barred, something like that.
Okay, all right. That's good. Your general example is good. Mm-hmm. Okay. What I want you to then think about is the sections of the Act or regulations that may be breached. Okay.
Okay. It's conflict in its own.
So, you did some of this in your first assignment.
Yes.
What section of the Land and Business Sale and Conveyancing Act were we talking about?
Section 5?
No. Section.
Is it 21?
No. So, conflict of interest, Land and Business Sale and Conveyancing Act. The starting point was section 30. Good.
Yes.
And so it was an offence in relation to that section. Uh-huh. But you could do it, as you said, under the regulations. And you mentioned the dual representation form.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. So the risk could be not getting the dual representation form. Okay. And if you didn't get the dual representation form, then you could be fined the 20,000. I think it's 20,000.
$20,000. Yes.
Is the penalty.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So how to prevent it? You could then say, to make sure that this didn't occur, you didn't have a conflict. You didn't breach the regulations and legislation relating to this. You would say how to prevent it would be to make sure that
you got the form,
or
you
and secondly, to make sure that your staff, for example, were
trained to get the form.
Good, trained, simple.
Yeah.
Trained so that they knew about the form, and hopefully supervised. So what's your next What's your next example?
Digital record.
A digital record.
Keep digital record, yeah, everything.
Okay, you can have a digital record.
Yeah.
So we just said we make sure we keep a good record. Then, because the legislation said we must keep record up to 7 years. Yeah.
Okay.
So we must make sure the record is there, and if we keep a digital record, we make sure we got a backup. Yeah.
Okay.
And if we don't keep the good record, then still a disciplinary action. You don't have a record.
Okay. Just before you get to disciplinary action, what we'd also be looking there is for you to write down the sections of the Act that require
you have a record.
the records. Okay. And then to state the consequence, what the penalty is.
Okay.
It's
You don't need to tell me off the top.
10,000.
You understand what I'm getting at? don't you?
Yeah.
Okay. So your examples are quite good, and then to prevent that, again, what do we have to prevent it?
We make sure we got a record. Then it's
Supervise.
we got a system in place.
Good.
Then,
Good system.
Yeah.
Good system in place, supervision,
Train
training,
staff
yeah,
for
being
record
kept.
keeping.
Yes, good record keeping, good organisations to access those records.
Yeah.
Good. Okay, great. Okay. I have to say, I'm very pleased with some of the examples you gave because they were all very varied. Now, there are many other areas which we talked about tonight, okay, which you could use. Okay. One area we didn't actually talk about was occupational health and safety, which affects everybody. And that can still be another area of risk for you. Now, so what I want you to do for homework. Homework.
We've got an assignment to do.
We've got this to do.
Homework.
What are you giving us?
Hard task.
The troops are in revolt, everybody. Homework. Now, what I want you to do for homework for next week, distant students included. You don't escape. Now, I want you to do questions 1 and 2 from your assignment.
Oh, assignment 3, yeah.
Assignment 3. Actually, it's 1 and 2A, actually. Question 1 and question 2A. Okay? Now, you've just done this exercise on here. Actually, it was a good effort. Okay? And really, this is very much what question 1 and question 2A are about. Okay? I want you to put some of the examples, okay, and do exactly as you've just done. I want you to think about the area of risk, to think about the consequence of what could go wrong. If it's what's going to go wrong, well, quite often it's going to be, how could you be sued? You might be sued for breach of contract. You might be sued for negligence. You might be breaching Section 18 of the Australian Consumer Law. Or you might be breaching some section from the Land and Business Sale and Conveyancing Act, the Conveyances Act, and so on. And then to put down, if you use an act, to put down the penalty. Okay? And then in the other columns to put down how you prevent it. And usually that's fairly straightforward. A lot of you tonight mentioned checklists. You mentioned supervision. You mentioned, what else did you, oh God, it's just gone. Training. Some of you mentioned training. Okay, so quite often that's a common theme. Okay. Now, question 1 and 2A, they're not meant to be difficult. Okay. What I want to see is different examples.
Different to these.
Well, different examples. Okay. I had one student who, when I gave an assessment like this, gave me 4 or 5 assessments all around settlement. Okay. Which are virtually the same thing, just different type of documents. Okay. So vary some of your examples where you can. Okay. All right. Very simple.
You're not saying, are you, that you want us to hang up on learn questions 1
No,
and 2 next week?
no, thank you. No, I just want you to get a start on your assignment. I don't want. Okay, just to clarify this, guys, distant students, I do not want 30 emails with your answers to questions 1 and 2A. Okay, I want you to just start your assignment and to do those 2 questions now.
Based on what we did tonight.
But based on what you did tonight, I think now you've got it.
Yeah.
Okay, this question shouldn't be too difficult. You don't have to write lots and lots of information. Okay, a simple table, very concise. Okay, area of risk, and you've got lots of areas. We talked about them tonight. You know, there's numerous sections in the Conveyance Act, Land and Business Standard Conveyance Act you can use. You can talk about how you might be sued for breach of contract, negligence. You've got even things like, you know, occupational health and safety you could use. You know, I come into your office and you gave me an answer earlier on. It's wide examples. Some of them have to be, some of those questions were to do with the contracts. I think question 2A relates to the contracts that you filled in. Okay, so with Form 1s and stuff, you'd use those with, is it 2A, I think, specifically about the ones you did in the exam. Yeah, so I don't want, in question 1, you wouldn't be using the same examples which you'd use in question 2A, basically. All right? Okay. All right.
We have to do it from the exam. 2A we have to do.
Yes, they're related to the exam. Okay.
2A's related to the exam.
I remember the exam.
Yes.
It's a blur.
No, you don't need to know. It's to do with those 3 documents.
It's talking about the scenario what we had.
No, not the scenario that you had. It's about the documents.
The documents.
Okay, the documents. So what you've drawn from the exam now is you're familiar with some of the issues in your 3 documents. Okay. I don't need you to remember the exact scenario. I just want you to remember the 3 documents that you used. Okay. And issues that could come up in relation to those 3 documents.
Yeah, so the Form 1 and the 2 different.
That's right.
Business and.
That's right. Whereas question 1 is much more general. 4 other examples across conveyancing. Any examples that you wish to do. Remember, concise, short. Remember the consequences. Students sometimes forget the consequences. You know, what damages might be claimed. Breach of contract. If you breach the section, the actual fine that may be there. You gave me some good examples about conflict of interest there, but you weren't referring me to the sections and the fines. You mentioned the trust accounts. And you gave a good example of the trust account, but you weren't mentioning the sections and the fines.
Didn't ask us that. No. You just didn't name the risk.
Yes, but it's up to you to present that. Okay. All right. Now, next week, we will be looking at contracts and interpretation, legislation and regulations, and also the code of conduct. We did searching a few weeks ago with OSLI, and we looked on board. I went online with you then, had a check on OSLI, and in that last assignment, there's a couple of things you have to do on OSLI to search the Conveyancing Act and to check when it was last amended and things like that. So we've done parts of that, but otherwise, I mean, that's it for tonight, guys. You can.
Wait.
Yeah.
I've got a couple of questions I've been wanting to ask you all week.
Right.
Okay.
Are these personal ones or general ones?
No, subjects for everyone. Okay. Where the purchaser of land or business is joint purchases, which will often be couples but not always. Now, I think that the wording of Section 5 and the definition of purchaser in the Act does allow for just one of those joint purchases to cool off if they wish. Is that correct?
Oh, that's a good question.
Because it says a purchaser can be... Because I looked at the wording and I studied it and I thought about it and I thought it seems to me the way it's worded...
Okay, I can't tell the answer off the top of my head. You'd have to look at the legislation, usually in the contract.
No, see, cooling off, blah, blah, blah. Subject to section, a purchaser under a contract for sale of land or a small business may by giving written notice, blah, blah, blah. And then if you look up the definition of a purchaser, which is right here somewhere, purchaser means the person or persons named in a contract as purchaser or purchasers or any one or more of them, which suggests that one of them can cool off if they want to.
Any one or more of them, that interesting.
So you're not sure?
I'd have to think about it.
Can you find out for us?
I'd have to think about that one.
Because a couple of questions came up to that. So, like, if one person, you know, say that
well,
one of them wanted to cool off.
Yes, but hold on. When you think about it, if the legislation, it's not going to become an issue if one person cools off and the others are still willing to continue on that legislation. I suppose it becomes an issue if the other person... Oh, but then again, they could cool off as well, couldn't they? If they weren't happy that person A was cooling off, they could cool off as well.
One person might, by cooling off, might force the other person's hand to cool off, right? But the questions I want to know is, so if they can't agree and one person wants to cool off, if they serve a cooling off notice just in their name, does that get that one purchaser out of the contract and the other person's still committed unless they subsequently cool off?
That's how I would interpret it, yeah.
Now, what if, this is the tricky part, one of your joint purchasers rings you up and says, I want to cool off, my partner doesn't, but I want to exercise my cooling off rights and I want you to tell me how to do it or help me do it by writing off a cooling off notice. Now we've got a conflict of interest on our own side that isn't covered by legislation.
Okay.
Because we can't deny someone their right or knowledge of how to cool off.
Hold on. You're saying the purchaser's asking you, as the vendor's conveyancer.
So we've got two purchasers, right? One of them wants to cool off, right?
Who are you acting for?
The purchasers.
You're acting for the purchasers.
Two purchasers, a couple. One of them says, look, I want to cool off, my partner doesn't, I want to exercise my cooling off rights regardless. Tell me how to cool off, help me cool off, write a cooling off notice. So we've now got a conflict of interest. Because we can't deny them their knowledge or right to cool off, but by helping them, we're hurting our other joint purchaser. Do you know what I mean? So we've got a conflict of interest.
Okay.
They're both your clients.
They're both your clients.
I know they're both my clients.
So,
but we have to act in the best interest of them individually as well as together. So,
or you'd say
so
that the second client is that.
Well, can I give Bill's answer?
Yeah. So, well, you'd be confirming to the other client that they were calling off.
Yeah.
And
that's not a conflict.
Tell them they want to call off.
They want to call off.
Why would that be a conflict?
Yeah, well, if I can speak.
Yeah,
so if one of them says, okay, help me write a cooling off notice or whatever, so we can write that cooling off notice to them in the one person's name and we're not opening ourselves to... We'll notify the other person that they're cooling off as well, but we're not under any... We're not going to get sued because we've heard the other
I would notify the person, say, person A wants to call off. Do you have any objection or anything you wish to add to this? And invite them to make some comment.
Yeah.
And then if there is an issue, then you know there's a conflict.
That's right.
But until then, I don't think there's a conflict as such, as long as you advise them that the other party advise you they wish to call off, and then to take it from there.
We haven't. So by writing a cooling off notice for one person, so long as we can tell the other person they've called off, we haven't breached any laws by hurting the other purchaser.
Well, okay. It depends in the context, but firstly, you'd be advising the other person. Presumably, they don't live together. That's what you're saying.
No, not necessarily. No. Look, there could be any reason why they could disagree one and call off.
Well, I don't know. There could be issues which are going behind the scenes. There could be financial issues which you don't know about. But the issue is initially is you basically advise the person that you've been instructed that purchaser A wishes to call off, and advise them if they have any issue or any concern about this.
Yeah.
And then if they do, then you would know if there's a conflict which is arising because of this. Well, then if there's a conflict of interest, the regulations are very clear. You cease to act.
For both of them?
For both of them, or you can still continue with one if the other party agrees.
Oh, okay. So it's not just conflict of interest between opposing parties. That's what I was wondering. So because it says in the legislation between opposing parties, it doesn't say conflict of interest within your own clients.
Right. It gets very tricky.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
So,
see you guys. That's all right. You can go.
Yep. You know, if we say we cease to act and open the clock is ticking, and then they might miss their cooling off period if no action is taken. The person that wants to call off. Do you know what I mean?
Oh yeah. Well, so if they're instructing you to call off, then that's what they're going to do, isn't it? But they don't. They can do that themselves by simply serving the notice themselves.
Yeah, but what if they're a person that, English might not be their first language, they're not...
Okay, well,
I need you to write the cooling off notice for me.
You can make lots of... The issue here is this is provided you're acting for the purchasers. If you're a vendor, you would...
I'm talking about purchasers.
So that's what I would do. I would do it like that. And then see what happens. Then see if a conflict then does exist. And if it does, then you'd cease to act.
And then you just tell them... They have to serve the cooling off notice themselves.
Well, if you see, you'd want. Well, no, you look. If time is of the essence, and you've taken those instructions, then you would, on behalf of that person, you would actually serve the calling off. But that's what I would do. I would advise the other party that's the instructions you've received. And that's all you can do. All right. Okay. Okay. Good night, everybody.